Have you ever felt like the weight of the world is crushing down on your shoulders? Like every problem you face is a mountain too steep to climb, too heavy to carry? You're not alone. We all have moments when life's challenges seem unbearable, when a missed deadline feels like failure, when a harsh word cuts deeper than it should, when uncertainty about the future keeps you awake at night. But what if I told you that the problem isn't actually the problem? What if the real issue isn't the size of your challenges, but the size of the container you're holding them in? Today, I want to share with you an ancient Buddhist wisdom wrapped in a beautiful story, a story that will change how you see every difficulty you'll ever face. This isn't about eliminating your problems. It's about something far more powerful, transforming yourself so completely that those same problems become as small as grains of sand in an endless ocean. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you'll discover the simple yet profound solution that has helped countless people find peace in the midst of chaos. Part 1: The Boy Who Carried Mountains, a Zen Story. In a small village nestled between ancient mountains and flowing rivers, there lived a young boy named Urav. He was a bright child, curious and kind, but he carried a burden that made him different from the other children who played freely in the streets. Every morning, while his friends laughed and chased butterflies through the meadows, Urav walked with hunched shoulders, his face creased with worry lines too deep for someone so young. His mother would forget to pack his favorite snack, and he'd spend the entire day consumed by sadness. His teacher would correct his handwriting, and he'd return home convinced he was a failure. A friend would choose to play with someone else, and Urav would lie awake that night, replaying the rejection over and over, each repetition making the pain sharper. To Urav, every small difficulty was a mountain. Every disappointment was a catastrophe. Every setback felt like the end of the world. His father, a man of few words but infinite wisdom, watched his son carry these invisible weights. He saw how Urav's bright spirit was dimming, how his laughter had become rare, how he was missing the beauty of his childhood because he was drowning in worries that seemed, to him, as vast as the ocean. One particularly difficult evening, Urav came home with tears streaming down his face. His best friend had accidentally knocked over his school project, a carefully constructed model he'd worked on for weeks. To Urav, this wasn't just a broken project. It was proof that nothing good ever lasted, that his efforts were meaningless, that the universe itself was against him. His father found him sitting by the window, staring out at nothing, lost in his sea of despair. Without a word, the father took Urav's hand. "Come with me, my son," he said gently. "I want to show you something." Part 2: The Lesson by the River, the Teaching Moment. They walked together in silence as the evening sun painted the sky in shades of amber and gold. The father led Urav to their backyard, where a small decorative pond sat still and calm, its surface reflecting the fading light like a mirror. Not far away, beyond their property, the great river that gave life to their village flowed ceaselessly, its waters singing an ancient song. The father reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cloth pouch. From it, he poured a handful of salt into his palm. Urav watched, confused, as his father knelt beside the pond. "Watch carefully, Urav," his father said, and he released the salt into the pond's still water. The white crystals dissolved slowly, spreading through the small body of water. The father dipped a wooden cup into the pond and offered it to his son. "Drink this." Urav took a small sip and immediately recoiled, his face twisting with disgust. The water was unbearably bitter, harsh on his tongue, undrinkable. He spat it out onto the ground. Terrible, isn't it? His father asked with a knowing smile. Urav nodded, still trying to get the awful taste out of his mouth. Now, come with me. They walked down the gentle slope to the riverbank, where the mighty river flowed with power and grace. The water rushed past them, ancient and unstoppable, carrying stories from distant mountains to the endless sea. The father reached into his pouch again and poured out the same amount of salt, a handful, no more, no less, and let it fall into the river's current. The white crystals disappeared instantly, swallowed by the river's vastness, dispersed and dissolved in its endless flow. The father filled his cup with water from the river and handed it to Urav. Now drink this. Hesitantly, remembering the bitter taste from before, Urav took a small sip. His eyes widened in surprise. The water was fresh, clean, sweet even. There was no bitterness at all. He could drink deeply without any unpleasant taste. It's good, Urav said, genuinely surprised. But, you put the same amount of salt in both, didn't you? His father sat down on a smooth rock by the river's edge and gestured for Urav to sit beside him. The boy settled next to his father, and together they watched the river flow, its surface catching the last golden rays of the setting sun. Yes, my son, the father said softly, his voice barely audible above the river's song. The same amount of salt. The difference isn't in the salt, it's in the container. Part 3, The Pond and the River Within, Buddhist Wisdom Unveiled. A comfortable silence fell between them as Urav processed what he'd just experienced. The river continued its eternal journey, indifferent to their small human drama, yet somehow part of it. The problems in your life, Urav, his father began, are like that salt. Sometimes there's more, sometimes less, but there's always some salt in the water of life. That's just how it is. The Buddha taught that life contains suffering, this is the first noble truth. But he didn't stop there, and neither should we. The father picked up a smooth pebble and tossed it gently into the river. They watched the ripples spread and disappear, absorbed by the river's vastness. Right now, your heart is like that pond, small, still, contained. When you put the salt of problems into a pond, it becomes bitter, undrinkable. Every little difficulty overwhelms you because there's not enough space for it to dissolve. Do you understand? Urav nodded slowly, beginning to see where this was leading. But, his father continued, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder, what if your heart could be like this river? Vast, flowing, deep, and strong. The same problems that make the pond bitter would barely be noticed in the river. The salt is still there, the problems don't disappear, but they lose their power to make your life unbearable. The boy looked out at the river with new eyes, seeing in its endless flow a metaphor for something larger than himself. So, the solution isn't to have fewer problems? Urav asked, his young mind grasping at this new understanding. No, my dear son. The solution is to become bigger than your problems. The solution is to expand your heart, to deepen your spirit, to widen your understanding until you become like this river, so vast that even great difficulties become small in comparison. Part 4, The Scale of Problems, Buddhist Philosophy Explained. In the Buddhist tradition, this wisdom is woven into the very fabric of the teachings. The Buddha spoke often of the mind's capacity, how a mind that is small, contracted, and bound by attachment suffers greatly, while a mind that is spacious, open, and free finds peace even in difficulty. There's a beautiful sutra where the Buddha describes 4 kinds of people: those who are like a shallow scratch that produces great pain, those who are like a tattoo that marks the skin permanently, those who are like a line drawn in sand that quickly fades, and those who are like a line drawn in water that disappears instantly. The difference? Not the intensity of the experience, but the capacity of the heart receiving it. Think about it for a moment. 2 people lost their jobs. One person spirals into depression, convinced their life is over, unable to function. Another person, while disappointed, sees it as an opportunity to reassess, to try something new, to grow. Same problem. Different container. This isn't about being stoic or suppressing emotions. It's not about pretending problems don't hurt or matter. The Buddhist path isn't about becoming a stone, unfeeling, and cold. It's about becoming a river, still feeling, still experiencing, but with such depth and flow that nothing can overwhelm you completely. In the Zen tradition, there's a saying, "The obstacle is the path." What does this mean? It means that difficulties themselves are not separate from your spiritual journey, they are the journey. Every problem you face is an invitation to expand, to grow, to become more river-like. When you have a pond mentality, you see problems as enemies to be eliminated. You spend your energy trying to prevent difficulties, fighting against reality, exhausting yourself in a battle you can never truly win. Because life, by its very nature, includes challenges. The Buddha called this dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness inherent in existence. Fighting against it is like fighting against gravity, you'll only tire yourself out. But when you develop a river mentality, something miraculous happens. You stop seeing problems as enemies and start seeing them as teachers. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me? How is this helping me grow?" Let me be clear, if you're watching this and thinking, "But my problems are real. They're serious. This is just positive thinking nonsense." I hear you. And you're right. Your problems are real. The salt is real. The bitterness is real. But so is your capacity to become larger than those problems. That's real, too. Part 5, From Pond to River, the Path of Transformation. So how do we make this transformation? How do we expand from pond to river? This isn't about a magic trick or a quick fix. It's about a gradual, intentional practice of expanding your inner capacity. First, cultivate spacious awareness through meditation. The foundation of becoming river-like is meditation. When you sit in meditation, you're not trying to empty your mind or achieve some special state. You're simply practicing being spacious. You're watching thoughts and emotions arise and pass away like clouds in a vast sky, like ripples on water. Start with just 10 minutes a day. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring attention to your breath. When problems arise in your mind, and they will, don't push them away. Notice them. Acknowledge them. Then return to your breath. You're training your mind to be like the river, present to everything, overwhelmed by nothing. The Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh taught a beautiful practice. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Simple, right? But in that simplicity, you're creating space. You're reminding yourself that you are not your problems. You are the awareness that holds them. Second, practice perspective through gratitude. A pond becomes fixated on the salt because there's nothing else to focus on. A river carries countless minerals, countless elements, and a whole ecosystem. Similarly, when your awareness is narrow, problems dominate. When your awareness is wide, problems take their rightful place as just one part of a much larger picture. Every evening, before you sleep, name 3 things you're grateful for. Not huge things necessarily: the warmth of your bed, the taste of your dinner, the smile of a stranger. This practice isn't about denying problems, it's about refusing to let problems be the only thing you see. The Dalai Lama, who has faced tremendous challenges, including exile from his homeland, maintains an extraordinary sense of joy and peace. How? He cultivates gratitude and perspective. He sees his challenges within the context of a much larger picture: the interconnection of all beings, the opportunity to practice compassion, and the impermanence of all conditions. Third, expand through service and connection. One of the fastest ways to expand your heart is to step outside yourself and serve others. When you're trapped in pond mentality, everything revolves around you: your problems, your suffering, your difficulties. This isn't selfishness, it's just the natural result of a contracted awareness. But when you volunteer, when you help a neighbor, when you listen to a friend's struggles with genuine presence, something magical happens. Your heart expands. You realize that everyone carries salt. Everyone has challenges. And in that recognition, your own problems feel less isolating, less overwhelming. The Buddha taught metta, loving-kindness meditation. You start by directing compassion toward yourself, then gradually extend it to loved ones, neutral people, difficult people, and finally all beings. This practice literally expands your circle of concern, making your heart more river-like. Fourth, embrace impermanence. The pond is still, unchanging, trying to hold on to everything. The river is always flowing, always moving, always letting go. One of the Buddha's most fundamental teachings is anicca, impermanence. Everything changes. Everything passes. Nothing lasts forever. When you're drowning in a problem, remember, this too shall pass. Not because you're being dismissive, but because it's the truth. No problem is permanent. No difficulty lasts forever. By embracing impermanence, you become less attached to your circumstances and more rooted in the deeper, unchanging awareness that witnesses all change. I once read about a Zen master who, when facing a terminal illness, simply said, "How interesting." Not because he didn't care, but because he had become so vast that even death was just another experience floating in his awareness, salt in the river. Fifth, study and reflect on wisdom teachings. Become a student of wisdom. Read the sutras. Study Buddhist teachers. Listen to Dharma talks. Not to become a scholar, but to continually remind yourself of the bigger picture. These teachings are like rain that gradually fills the pond, turning it into a lake, then a river, then an ocean. When you fill your mind with wisdom, you're expanding your container. You're giving yourself frameworks for understanding suffering, tools for working with difficulty, and inspiration for the journey ahead. Part 6, Real-Life Applications, Practical Wisdom for Daily Life. Let me share some concrete examples of how this river mentality transforms real-life situations. Scenario 1, Relationship conflict. Pond mentality. Your partner says something critical, and you spiral. You replay it all day. You imagine the worst. You convince yourself the relationship is doomed. The salt overwhelms the pond. River mentality. Your partner says something critical, and you feel the sting. Yes, it hurts. But you create space around it. You consider their perspective. You recognize your own sensitivity. You communicate clearly without drowning in the drama. The salt dissolves in the vastness. Scenario 2, career setback. Pond mentality, you don't get the promotion. You're devastated. Your identity crumbles. You're a failure. Your future is ruined. Everything feels hopeless. River mentality, you don't get the promotion. You're disappointed, that's valid. But you see it as one event in a long career. You ask what you can learn. You explore other opportunities. You remain confident in your worth beyond this single outcome. Scenario 3, health challenges. Pond mentality, you receive a difficult diagnosis. Fear consumes everything. You can't think of anything else. Every moment is colored by anxiety. River mentality, you receive a difficult diagnosis. The fear is there, you don't deny it. But you also find pockets of peace. You connect with loved ones. You appreciate the moments of feeling okay. You approach treatment with courage while maintaining perspective. Scenario 4, daily annoyances. Pond mentality, traffic, a rude comment, a technology glitch, each one ruins your whole day. You carry the frustration from one moment to the next, accumulating bitterness. River mentality, the same annoyances arise, but they flow through you. You feel the irritation, acknowledge it, and let it pass. Each moment is fresh, not contaminated by the previous one. Do you see the pattern? The river mentality doesn't eliminate problems or emotions. It provides space for them to exist without defining your entire experience. Part 7, the Buddha's teaching on the two arrows. There's a famous Buddhist teaching that perfectly illustrates this wisdom. The Buddha spoke of two arrows. The first arrow is the pain life brings, the inevitable difficulties, losses, and challenges. This first arrow is unavoidable. It's the salt in the water. But there's a second arrow, and this one we shoot at ourselves. It's our reaction to the first arrow, our resistance, our spiraling thoughts, our catastrophizing, our why me. This second arrow is optional, yet it often causes more suffering than the first. When you have a pond mentality, you're constantly shooting second arrows. The problem happens, first arrow, and then you make it worse with your reaction, second arrow. You add salt to salt, bitterness to bitterness. When you have a river mentality, you learn to feel the first arrow without automatically shooting the second. The problem happens, and yes, it hurts. But you don't multiply the suffering with your mental reactions. You create space. You let it be. You let it flow. This is the heart of Buddhist practice, not the elimination of the first arrow, that's impossible, but the wise response that prevents the second arrow from multiplying our pain. Part 8, Becoming the River, Your Personal Practice. Now, I want you to take a moment right now, yes, right now, and think about a problem that's been weighing on you. Maybe it's relationship stress, financial worry, health concern, work pressure, or just that general anxiety about the future. Hold that problem in your awareness. Now ask yourself honestly, am I treating this problem like it's in a pond or in a river? Have I contracted around this difficulty, making it my whole world? Or have I maintained perspective, seeing it as one part of a larger, richer life? If you're being honest, you'll probably recognize pond mentality at work. That's okay. That's normal. That's human. The awareness itself, the simple recognition, is the first step toward change. Here's a practice you can start today, right after watching this video: the river reflection practice, 5 minutes daily. 1. Sit quietly and bring to mind your current challenges. Name them. Don't hide from them. 2. Imagine placing each challenge into a vast river. See how the river continues to flow, how it carries your difficulties without being defined by them. 3. Ask yourself, what would I need to expand in me for this problem to feel more manageable? What quality would make my heart more river-like? 4. Perhaps it's patience. Perhaps it's trust. Perhaps it's letting go of control. Perhaps it's accepting impermanence. Whatever arises, invite that quality into your awareness. 5. End by silently affirming, I am not my problems. I am the vast awareness that holds them. I am the river, not the pond. Do this practice daily for 30 days. Watch what happens. You won't eliminate your problems, but you'll transform your relationship with them. Part 9. The invitation to transform. Friends, if you're still with me, thank you. What we've explored today isn't just a nice story or a philosophical concept. It's an invitation to a fundamentally different way of living. You don't have to wait until your problems disappear to feel peace. You don't have to fix everything to find joy. You don't have to become perfect to deserve happiness. You simply need to expand, to become so vast, so deep, so flowing that life's inevitable challenges become manageable. This is the simple solution the title promised. The solution isn't to change your problems. The solution is to change yourself. Not by becoming someone different, but by becoming more fully yourself, more spacious, more aware, more present, more compassionate. By becoming the river you were always meant to be. Think back to little Arav at the beginning of our story. By the river's edge that evening, something shifted in him. He didn't suddenly have fewer problems. His school project was still broken. His challenges didn't vanish. But he saw them differently. He held them differently. He had been given a new container for his pain. And over time, as he practiced this wisdom, as he meditated, as he cultivated gratitude, as he connected with others, as he studied the Dharma, Arav's heart genuinely expanded. The pond became a lake. The lake became a river. The river eventually became an ocean. Years later, when Arav faced truly difficult challenges, the death of a loved one, career failures, health crises, he remembered that evening by the river. He remembered the taste of bitter pond water and sweet river water. And he remembered that he had a choice: contract or expand, pond or river, suffering or spaciousness. Before we close, let me ask you to do something important. If this message resonated with you, if you felt even a small shift in how you see your challenges, please subscribe to Buddha Coha and share this video. Not for me, but for the person in your life who needs to hear this message. The person who's drowning in pond water right now. The person who needs to be reminded that they can become a river. Your subscription helps this wisdom reach more people. Your sharing creates ripples that spread far beyond what you can see. In this way, you become part of the river too, part of the flow of wisdom and compassion that has been moving through humanity for millennia. Part 10, Sacred Wisdom, Buddhist Quotes to Carry with You. Let me leave you with some timeless words from the Buddhist tradition. Let these sink into your heart like rain into soil. From the Buddha, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. The first arrow will come. The salt will be added. But how we respond, That's where our freedom lies. From the Dhammapada, the mind is everything. What you think you become. If you think like a pond, you become a pond. If you think like a river, you become a river. Your mind shapes your reality. From Shantideva, if the problem can be solved, why worry? If the problem cannot be solved, worrying will do you no good. Either way, the river mentality serves you better than the pond mentality. From Pema Chodron, the most fundamental aggression to ourselves, the most fundamental harm we can do to ourselves, is to remain ignorant by not having the courage and the respect to look at ourselves honestly and gently. Looking honestly at our pond mentality, without judgment, is the beginning of transformation. From Thich Nhat Hanh, people have a hard time letting go of their suffering. Out of a fear of the unknown, they prefer familiar suffering. The pond is familiar. The river requires courage. But oh, what freedom awaits on the other side. My dear friends, I want to end with a simple truth. You are capable of this transformation. You are capable of becoming the river. Right now, wherever you are, whether you're watching this in bed late at night, during a break at work, or while commuting, know that you carry within you an infinite capacity for spaciousness. You are not limited by your current container. The pond can become a river. The river can become an ocean. Every problem you face is an invitation, not a punishment. No evidence that you're failing. An invitation to expand, to grow, to become more fully who you're meant to be. Will you accept the invitation? Will you start the practice? Will you become the river? The salt will always be there. That's okay. But when you're vast enough, deep enough, flowing enough, the salt loses its power to make your life bitter. Instead, it becomes just another mineral in the rich ecosystem of your experience. Start today. Start now. Take one deep breath and feel the space inside you. That space is already there. You're not creating it, you're just remembering it. You're remembering that you are vast. You are the river. You always have been. May you flow freely, carry your challenges with grace, and find peace in the midst of all conditions. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, subscribe to Buddha Coha for more wisdom like this, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it today. Until we meet again, may you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free. Namaste.